just do this kind of thing, right? And then he goes to the other part and says, hey, just do this. And he looks like he's just throwing Jell-O on a wall, hoping to see what sticks, right? And then all of a sudden it comes together and you're like, oh yeah, and some of you guys don't even know what the songs were because you're that young. And you didn't know that there was 2 different songs that got played there because, once again, you're that young. Others of us who have less hair than you, because our hair is migrated, we recognize that. So it looks a little random, but here's what he's doing. He's the go-between because he shows up. The musicians have no clue what he's going to do. They don't know the songs. They don't know the notes. They don't have any music that actually works for them. And the audience knows it's something different, but they don't know what's going on either. So here's what's actually going on. Jacob is serving in this role as a priest. He's the go-between between the music, the audience, and the band, the orchestra. He's the thing, he's like kind of pull it all together. He's like, I see this is going on. There's a theme, there's a connection, and then it all comes together and you're like, oh, that's beautiful, right? I guarantee you there are times where it was not beautiful. We got to see the highlight reel, right? I would encourage you, go find it's the Jacob Collier in San Francisco Orchestra. I think it's 22 minutes. It's a great video to watch. I cut it down to 4.5 minutes, right? So this is what a priest does. A priest is the go-between between the people, society, and God. And we're going to get into what a nation of priests are, a generation of priests are, and what does that look like for you and I. And Jacob did all of this for a music experience. And we as followers of Jesus in the 219, we have a higher calling. And don't you think it's worth giving it all you have? Guarantee you there are things that had to get changed in the musician's practice, and even in Jacob's practice, to make this whole thing come about. And it was for a 21-minute, 22-minute video. It was kind of cool. That's awesome. And we have such a higher calling than just a highlight reel, don't we? So let's lean into this. Now, here's the deal. We've talked about this before. There are 3 enemies within our soul. 3 enemies that are attacking our soul. 3 enemies that are going after us. And a priest is going to step in between and help push back the darkness in all of these 3 enemies. Number 1, the enemy is Satan, the adversary, the accuser, that actual enemy, that being, that figure, and all of that. Number 2 is our actual sinful desires. Sometimes everything you do and you want to do is not Satan's fault. Sometimes it's your own fault. Right? And you need to know that. The third one is that every time you read in the Bible and it says the world or the culture, what that really is the collection of all the humans with their evil desires. And you can see this trend, like we have a theme within our culture that just simply changes over and over again. So, the priest steps in and helps push back the darkness and against all 3 of our enemies. And you have to know this. The enemies are going after your souls. They want to seek, kill, and destroy you. They don't want the best for you, right? And part of that, like there are things that you want to do, but you just don't do. That's your evil desires. There are things that you're like, man, I wish I could live for God, but how do I do that? And I don't know how to do it. And so we get shy and we kind of hide back from it, right? We don't want to actually pursue the things. So we're in 1 Peter chapter 2. We've been studying chapters, or Peter, not chapters. And sometimes what we have to realize is that chapter breaks and the headings aren't always helpful for us. And this is one of those situations. I've read this is a random side note, but I was reading like, how do we get the chapters and the headings? And really what it was is an old man was in a carriage in the 1500s after the printing press had like made enough Bibles. They're like, we should help break this out. So 1600s. And basically when he got lost in train of thought, he would be like, oh, have you ever noticed that verses aren't always the same standard? Is basically got lost in train of thought, and he's like, oh, here it is. Sometimes it was the horse hit a bump, and he would make a mistake, and it'd be like, that's like what I think where they got cut in the middle of the half of the sentence. So either way, here we are. And then the headings came out and all that later and stuff like that. I don't have time for my own theories about the headings, so here we are. All right, so 1 Peter chapter 2, let's get into it. Here's what Peter says. Therefore, rid yourselves of all the malice and all kinds of deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave spiritual milk, so that by the time you grow up in salvation, now that you have tasted the Lord is good. Verse 4, as you come to him, the living stone, who has been rejected by humans, but chosen by God and precious to him. that you may also, like a living stone, who are being built up as spiritual houses, be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So let's start with this. First one, rid yourself, repent of, cleanse. It's that deep cleanse that we talked about earlier this series, where you like literally pull everything out of your life. Like doing the deep clean of your refrigerator, your freezer. Which, by the way, you should probably deep clean your freezers at some point. Why not, right? We randomly found a thing that was 10 years old when we were cleaning out our deep freezer. I was like, that was gross. I don't even want to try to cook that. You know what I mean? So there are times where you literally have to just do the deep clean of your life. That you sit before God. This is where silence and solitude just helps you out. Where you sit before God and you just calmly say, okay, God, search me. What is it in my life that needs to get drawn out? And it's in that silence and solitude where you have no distractions, it's just you and God, that all of a sudden things start coming to the surface and how you get rid of it, right? Let's go back to the musicians. I guarantee you, as the musicians, because they're professionals, by the way, they're not fifth grade people who are learning how to play whatever the songs they would have learned how to play in fifth grade. I don't know. I played the tuba, and that was about it. And then I quit. But I guarantee you there are things that the band people, actually the musicians, did when they were growing up that were wrong. And that their instructor saw something in them and said, hey, you should probably stop doing it this way, and you should play it correctly. There's always form, there's always like hitting the wrong notes and all that kind of stuff. And then they had to start doing certain things that were correct, right? As a follower of Jesus, we tend to get annoyed when we get told, hey, you're doing something wrong. We don't like it. We feel like church is too judgy. Well, why? If you show up to a gym and you pay a professional trainer, that trainer is going to tell you, hey, you're lifting wrong. How arrogant would it be for you to think, well, I'm going to show up and lift correctly all the time? Or for the musicians to show up and say, I can do this perfectly all the time. Sometimes you actually need to be told, you're doing something wrong. The habits you are forming are going to create something that's bigger and it's going to be harder to unlearn and all that. So, I work out with the same group of guys, the same group of people for about 5 years now. And there are people who are still lifting wrong. Even though our instructor's like, hey, stop doing it that way. And they just don't want to do it. So the instructors, you know what they do? They stop talking to them about the lift. At some point, the person who's in charge of this, like the instructors and all that, stop telling you what you're doing wrong. That's not a great sign. As a follower of Jesus, learn how to be teachable. The Holy Spirit will come in and say, hey, you're doing something wrong. And why would we be so arrogant to think that we have it all right? There are times where you're going to have to say, okay, God, I'm obviously doing something that's not correct. Right? Now, I'm not saying because of, like, if you have a bad week, all of a sudden God's against you. That is not what I'm saying. Right? But if you look at the gifts of the Spirit, does your life look like the gifts of the Spirit? And if not, then you should probably ask, hey, what am I doing that's differently? Right? And it's not that you just stop doing the wrong things. You actually pick up the right habits of righteousness. You step in and start doing the things that are correct. And for, like musicians and all that, there are things you have to stop doing, and then there's going to be things that you have to start doing. And as the musicians, the orchestra, they started doing that, I guarantee you they started transforming into the professionals that they are. Right? The same is true for you and I as followers of Jesus. As we start doing the right things and we stop doing the bad things in the form of following Jesus, all of a sudden now we start getting transformed from the inside out. So we don't like to have this conversation in church, but the reality of it is some of us, we all need it. And sometimes you just need to have the come to Jesus moment where you're like, hey, I'm doing something that's wrong. What is that? And this is where community is so important. This is why we don't just isolate ourselves as followers of Jesus. We live in missional communities, and missional communities lean into each other. It's not just like, hey, you're doing something wrong, and it's like, that's it. It's this encouragement that's like, hey, there's something better for you. Let's try to figure this out. So I don't know if you've ever asked yourself, what is your role as a follower of Jesus? Like, if you follow Jesus, you pray the prayer, you start living for Jesus, why doesn't Jesus just take you out of heaven, or take you out of this earth and go to heaven? What's the purpose of you living on this earth? This is sometimes what we call the evacuation theology. So we all have a role to play. Think about this. Who is Peter writing to? Who's the audience that that Peter's writing to that we get to learn from and all of that? It's not professional Christians. It's not the priests. It's not the elite. It's the people who are everyday followers of Jesus, who are living for him, have a job, and they're trying to figure this all out. And here's what Peter says to them, that you are a royal priesthood. You have some kind of chosen ability and all that. So he's reminding this generation that they are a priestly generation. He's pulling them a theme for them out of the Exodus story. That Jesus is going to tell Peter this. Peter's going to tell his generation this. That there's a whole theme that's woven all the way through the meta-narrative of the Scriptures in all of the Old Testament and in the New Testament. That they are a priestly generation. When God rescues Israel out of Egypt, he meets with them on a mountain, and he says to them in Exodus chapter 19, okay, you are now a royal priesthood, a nation of priests, that you will bless the nation around you. That whenever the nations want to see what God is like, what Yahweh is like, all they do is look at Israel. Right? Do they get it perfect all the time? Absolutely not. Right? So now Peter is telling the people in the audience, the original audience, and for you and I, hey, you're a royal priesthood generation. Does that make you feel like, yeah, good, great. Now you have to ask yourselves, when's the last time you saw a priest? Right? What does a priest actually do? The nation of Israel, you know what they did? They slaughtered goats and sheep and oxen and bulls. Anyone signing up for that? Not really. Nope. So, it's a nation of priests. The priests are the go-between. The original audience would have understood this. It's the go-between between the culture and the deity and the actual information, all that. So they had the gatekeepers for that. So God is going to lead them out of Egypt, the nation of Israel. And it's not just simply, hey, you're free. Now there's a purpose for them, right? So here's the reality of it. When we're saved, we actually get saved for a purpose. That you are now being called to be the priest of your office, of your school, of your workplace, of your gym, of your neighborhood, of anywhere that you find yourself in the 219. That he rescues us for a purpose and on purpose. So whenever you get rescued by Jesus, you never know what your actual role is going to be. All you're really being obedient to is whatever he calls you to do next. Right? Think about the musicians. Did they have to know the entire picture to do their part? Did they even know what their whole picture was? No, it was like, hey, can you play these 3 notes? Can you just do this thing? Seems simple. And all they had to do was be obedient. When it comes to following Jesus, we tend to want the entire big picture. And Jesus is like, no, I just want you to play your part. I just want you to do your thing. What's your role? Do you have 3 notes you can play? Can you open the door and say, hey, welcome to church? Right? We tell people all the time, if you can pass a background check, hold babies, change diapers, and love them, you can change the world around you. Right? Please be able to pass a background check. Right? So, there are tons and tons of things to get involved in how to become a priest within this area. If you can literally pray for people at your workplace, that will create a thin place in your workplace. Right? Now, it doesn't just simply happen. You have to go through a process. And one of those processes is ridding yourself of your own evil that you have. How hypocritical would it be for you to be like, hey, I'm a godly person, and then you have all this sin in the background? Now, do we all have sin? Yeah. Right? We're all set apart, though. We're going to get into this next part. That like God is calling us to a holiness level. And he knows your sin. He's not like, hey, I'm super surprised. I didn't know anything about your sin. He knows all of it. And yet he's still going to call you to this level of holiness. Right? So there are times that you don't know your whole part. You just need to know, like, okay, God, I'm just going to be obedient to you there. The other thing that I would encourage you to do, not just to simply sit in silence for a couple minutes a day or a few minutes a day, but to get away and disconnect and just simply dream. Allow God to start giving you a vision of what God has in store for your life. Especially as you come to a point where you're closing certain chapters and you're opening new chapters. Don't assume that your ideas are the best ideas. What if you simply said, okay, God, what's your actual dream for my life? What would it look like? to actually live for you? What would it look like for me to actually take my next step to honor you, right? When we first started Rethink Church, we moved up here, and then we had a year, what I would call a year from hell. I was in and out of the hospital because I had an infection that I got from a barber shop. I also may have had a concussion from a longboarding incident, and just had like an entire leg that was destroyed by the gravel. And then Carson was in the hospital for a month or so at Riley because of some appendix issues and stuff like that. And it just felt like everything and anything that we were doing was by the way, there was an enemy who was coming after us. Yeah. Does that make sense? So I remember thinking, okay, God, we said yes to you, and I really thought everything was going to be up and to the right. Yeah. And I am the ordained professional pastor, Christian. Like, what is going on here? And God was like, okay, cool. Just stay obedient. And I was like, obedient with like a tip, like a bonus? Like, does that mean like, yeah, okay, cool, I can be obedient to that. And there are times where I think you just have to simply be obedient, right? And so I got away and I started just listening and started the idea of like, what is Rethink Church going to start with? What does it look like? What does it actually mean? And so I just started journaling and started doing this. And for probably half a day, I just got away. And this right here, I was talking to our staff this last Thursday about this. That this has sat on my desk, and like a wall behind my desk in my office for 9.5 years. And let me just read this to you. That Rethink Church would be a network of 7 to 10 mother churches that would plant local missional communities to reach the 225,000 unchurched people. That we would be a church that would start a movement to unleash the potential in every person in Lake County, to discover their God-sized, God-given dream, to challenge the status quo as we saturate the 219 with Jesus' kingdom and his grace and his mercy. Now, sounds great, right? And then you're like, oh, there's a huge uphill battle. There's challenges. How do you convince the 225,000 plus people who've given up on church, who find it irrelevant, who find it to be stupid and pointless, that they should actually believe in Jesus? And that's the challenge, right? A couple years after that, I wrote on the back of this, the 7 domains of culture. Like, how would we actually influence, not just have a big auditorium, not just have a big full thing, but to actually push back the darkness that we find in the 7 domains of society, which are family, religion, education, government, media, arts, entertainment, or whatever, and economics. Like, how do we actually come up with a nation of priests to step into those realms and to push back the darkness? So for 9.5 years, it's been there. And it's been this dream that just like, okay, God. And I'll be honest, there are times where I'm like, I feel like it's worth giving up on. There are times where it's just like, and this week, a friend of mine just said, hey, he knows this. And he's like, I think it's time for you to dream. And I don't know about you. I think there's some of us who've given up on our hopes and our dreams to our families. That you look around and like, God, it's so dark. There's so much sin in my life. There's so much sin in my family's life. There's so much generational bondage. And I just want to encourage you, push back the darkness. Rid yourself. It is time for you to pull out the sin and denounce the sin in your own life, and then denounce the sin in your generational life and say, we're done. Yeah. And be a holy generation and break the generational curses time after time after time and be holy, right? It's this beautiful thing that Peter's just going to continually call us into as a holy priesthood. That some of us, we need to step into it and actually step into that. And once again, I told you that the chapter verses weren't great. And this whole theme actually picks up in 1 Peter chapter 2 or chapter 1 verse 13. Here's what he says, the whole theme of it. Therefore, that you're with minds that are fully alert and sober. Set your hope on the grace that is brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. There was a time where you didn't know the truth. And you're ignorant. But now that you know the truth, live as a holy people. Here's what he says. Just as he who called you to be holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy. Because I, your God, am holy. Right? So, mind's fully alert. Let's not live a distracted life, parents. Your kids and the next generation are too important for you to be like, killed on Candy Crush, or whatever your game is, right? Or doom scroll for a half hour, 45 minutes, and those 45 minutes really turns into like 4 hours. Let's be honest, right? Let's have a fully alert mind, right? Sober-minded, not distracted. Not one thing out of, like, thinking always about Jesus' kingdom. How many parables are there that Jesus talks about where the people are caught unprepared? That Jesus is like, hey, the master's going to go away, he's going to come back, but you better be prepared. Those are not just nice little stories. Those are warnings for you and I. Oh, we actually do need to actually be prepared. Another way of translating that Greek word is calm, collected in spirit. That when the craziness of this world is going on, can you actually be calm because you're fully alert? And you're like, oh, this craziness around us, the inflation, whatever your gas prices, whatever the thing, you're like, oh, God, you're in control. We got this. Like, I don't need to spiral with this, right? And then Peter goes on to say, set your hope, which is a verb in the Greek. It's not just like this now. Like, it's an action-oriented. Like, you're going to intentionally put your hope into Jesus. And then we tend to forget the prize that is offered, especially when it's this future thing, like this idea of like salvation. It's this big, grand gesture of the hope of somewhere down the road and all of that. And we tend to think, man, I really want, like, we live in a microwave generation, don't we? I want something now. And Jesus is like, no, I'm slow cooking something. Right? You can technically cook a piece of roast in a microwave. It's not going to be great, but you can do it. Right? So let the slow cooker process happen. Salvation is a joyful gift, right? Do you actually have confidence that salvation is a joyful gift? That's what Peter's reminding us of here. Actually have that confidence. And the grace, once again, is a gift we don't deserve. You're not just avoiding punishment. Obedient children, this is, like, I hate talking about obedience. I'm just a rebellious person. And I feel like the scriptures keeps reminding me, don't rebel. Actually be obedient. And the Greek here is actually this joyful submission. That is not my love language. Like, that is not, like, I'm like, Peter, can you, like, Peter was probably bold and arrogant at times too, right? And here's Peter reminding us, joyful submission. Not so much for me, right? But there are times where you have to actually focus in on this. Once again, Peter's reminding us of this focus on the next generation, not just ours. And I was reading some studies, and I've been reading for a while now, helping one of my friends with a book about AI and the algorithm and the formation of our brains. And he threw some material out to me, or out to the group that I'm a part of, and how when you do a habit, whatever that habit is, that you are creating neural pathways in your brain. And that's not new. Like, we all like, okay, cool. The new study showed us, though, that the proteins are being dropped into your pathways, which is not being given to the next generation. It's being transformed into your DNA. That the pathways that we're creating is now all of a sudden being passed down to the next generation, good or bad. That we have to start thinking this through. The epigenetics study that the DNA markers are being formed, and it's like, whoa. My habits aren't just for my generation. And yeah, like, my kids watch me and they catch things that I'm doing, like, that's more. But also the way I think, the way I form, habits that I'm creating, evil or good, is somehow being passed down to the next generation. And I think we need to be aware of that, right? So the habits we actually form are being there. So why not be holy as God is holy, right? We're set apart. We're not common. We're not just disposable. This will transform our brains and our neurons and all that. And then let's get into the word malice. This is a nice light topic for Mother's Day. Malice is a desire to be wicked and depraved. People who brag about how bad they are. Sometimes, this is when we talk about sharing our testimonies and stuff like that. In our churches, we say, hey, we're never going to glorify the sin. Because some people love to brag about how bad they are. That's malice, right? They actually want to desire bad things. And yet, there's things that we have to get rid of. And the reason we get rid of them is because of our identity. We are priests. We represent Jesus to this world. Right? Like, think about that. And if we represent Jesus to the world, we don't need to know the whole picture of it. We just need to say, okay, Jesus, you're asking me to be obedient here. I'm going to be obedient here. You want me to be holy and set apart? Okay, I can do that. And you don't know what your example would inspire for somebody else. You don't know what that actually means to be like called differently or to a different level and stuff like that. Not just to go to church, but actually be the church. Being the church starts with a transformation that happens within us, right? Not just simply like, start a movement. Great. It'll fizzle out. But if you actually have the character to withstand it because Jesus is doing something inside of you, that's when it passes on. So what does it look like for us to step into the 7 domains of culture as the priest? Once again, it's religion, family, education, government, media, business, and the entertainment. That we're all priests. Not just one gender, by the way, but we're all priests. And you get to step into your office, at your banks, at your schools, at your workplaces, at your gyms, in your neighborhood, and you get to be the priest to help create the thin space where heaven meets earth in your 9-to-5 job. And it starts with being transformed as a person, being transformed from the inside out, and then doing whatever God asks you to do. And whatever the spiritual realm and the spiritual temperature is within your area, you set that. You're not responsible for everyone, but you get to set the tone. You can't do it on your own, so you might as well pray and ask for Jesus' help. Just a pro tip, right? Let's take the idea of education. Literacy rates have been plummeting, I would say, probably since 2010 with the introduction of the Chromebook into the classrooms. We want to blame it on COVID, but they weren't getting great during this time either. When we started like, hey, we have this new technology. It'll read to you. Great. It's awesome for me who's dyslexic, right? But there are times, and I jokingly tell my students this all the time too, I force myself to read two to three books a year, like actually physically read them. It'll take me an entire year to read these three books, but I do it. And I'm here to tell you, I think it's time that Christians should consider stepping into the education realm as missionaries to help set the tone. There's an agenda, and we need to at least acknowledge it. And if you step in thinking, man, I'm going to step into this education thing, I'm going to get a great career out of it, and you think it's all nice and secure because it's a government-funded job, read a newspaper. But if you step in and say, man, I could actually be a missionary, I could set the spiritual tone as the priest of my classroom, that's worth fighting for. That's worth getting better as a teacher for. The idea of families. If you did the economic study alone of the strain of divorce, that there are times where there are similar families who have similar backgrounds, education levels, and all, family structures and all that, and they go through a divorce and they drop 30 percentiles in the economic chart because of the cost of divorce. And then you have single parents who are raising kids, and 50% of those families who go through divorce lower themselves into the tax bracket and rely more on government assistance. And by the way, that money doesn't just appear. That money is paid for by other people. And I'm here to tell you, generation after generation after generation, when somebody who relies on government assistance, that exposes the widows, the orphans, and the refugees and leaves them vulnerable. I witnessed it this week with one of the people that I was working with was left exposed because they relied too much on the government assistance. And there was nothing I could actually do to help because it was just like, ugh. And it just felt like I felt horrible. Does that make sense? Of like, I think there's something we could do to help, but there's actually nothing I could do to help. You're left exposed. So when we step in as social workers and we help solidify that and we help manage some of those things, You're creating a thin space in that moment, right? And I don't know what you need to do. I think maybe some of us, you need to get away and just start dreaming. And say, Jesus, how does my life get to help push back the darkness? What is it in my life that needs to be re-engaged and reunited? And like, how do I actually step back into this? And what is my role in the 219? How do I actually bring your kingdom into this space, right? And you become the place of doing all that. And some of us, we just simply need to repent. The transformation process needs to start with us. And we actually start saying, okay, God, here I am as a priest. And God's going to say, okay, let's cut some things out of your life. Let's break the addiction. Let's stop joking about sin. Let's not brag about how evil you are. Some of us, we love to do that because it makes us feel good. And Jesus looking at you and said, I died on the cross for you to walk away from that, not to joke about it. So, and I think some of us, you need to name your priestly domain. I'm the priest of this cubicle. I'm the priest of this classroom. I'm the priest of fill in the blank. And then actually start to dream again. I don't know whether it hits you, but I think you as an identity, like you just need to identify whatever your next step is. And we'll go from there. Jesus, thanks for this day. Thanks for who you are. And God, I'm so glad that we don't need to know the entire thing to be obedient to you, but we just simply need to be obedient to whatever you've called us to do. Maybe it's playing 3 notes. Maybe it's playing it pizzicato B flat, whatever that even means. But God, you've called us to play a role. So God, would you help us to identify what we need to stop doing and to start doing? And would you help us to be a generation of priests for the 219? We love you, God. So you may pray this. Amen.
Thanks, Mark. I want you guys to know God is doing things in your life all the time. Miracles. We want God to prove things. We want him to show up. We want him to do stuff for us. And he is all the time. Maybe we don't see it the way we want to, but just think out of all eternity, you're here right now. Like we're here. We don't have any idea how many miracles it took for us to be here right now, sitting in the chairs we are with the people we're with. So I want you guys to know God deeply loves you. He's doing miraculous things in your life. Open our eyes and our hearts and our minds to see that he loves us so much. And if you're visiting today, I want you to know that you're loved and that God does care about you. We have a visitor's table right outside these doors. Angela would love to talk to you and give you a hug and just say thank you for checking us out today and give you a gift. We also, if you call Rethink Your Home and you believe in the vision and mission of Rethink, which is to bring the kingdom of heaven to the 219, there are a couple ways you can give. You can give in the black box in the back, or you can go to rethinkchurch.cc and click the Give tab and give that way. It is connected to Splash now, so if you deactivated the old stuff, you can still go to the website and it'll automatically go to Splash. We didn't announce, we're going to have a men's breakfast the first Saturday in June. Yeah, so, and it's just, I know how you men, you heard that and you're like, ugh. I know how you feel, men. But this is just going to be to check your pulse, like going to get a checkup, right? There's no big commitments. We're just going to go eat breakfast and hang out and just see how everybody's doing because we don't do that as much as we should. So we're just going to get together first Saturday in June and have breakfast. Mothers, we have pie out here for you. It says instructions in the notes. I don't know what the instructions are, but there's pie out there for you guys. Maybe take one piece. I don't know. Yeah, okay, one piece per mom. And somebody will help you get that. Moms, we love you. So go and have a great week and be appreciated. Have a good week.